Greetings, everybody. Be doing a lesson from the second half of Module 2 today on returns. And so if you're following along with me, this should be from 2.2 Returns PowerPoint. And then also there's another 2.2 PowerPoint about banking and interest rates. It doesn't really have as much to do with the things we have in this class to go over, but I think it's still good information for you to have, so I won't be spending time reviewing that. But if you wanted to, you see it kind of looks like this, and it talks a little bit about kind of how the banking industry works, and as a consumer, what you might be looking for. It's fairly interesting, that whole world and realm, and maybe that's something that you've worked in at a bank or plan to work in at a bank, but it's definitely a game that revolves around interest rates and obviously return on investments. And so, just obviously looking at how rates work, which talks a little bit about here, would be helpful as well. So that being said, let's turn to this returns PowerPoint, and we'll talk a little bit about how returns are calculated. Now, just in case you don't know, we can look at returns, basically what kind of percentage return are we getting on our investment through a few different methods. A holding period return will tell us through the length of unknown, we have been able to get a certain percentage return. And so, like if you go out long enough, just talking about the general stock market, from 1930 to 2020, in those 90 years, the stock market has returned a, 5,900% return. And it's talking about over the course of that entire time period in history, which really, it doesn't really help us too much, right? Because unless you're specifically talking about returns in relation to another using the same time period, like a 10-year return, 5-year return are common to look at. Those numbers need the time, right? Like in the time element of time value of money to have meaning. And so because of that, there was a guy named Richard Morse out of K-State that I had to do some research on, and he basically created the standard by which we measure yields through the annual percentage yield, APY, calculation system, where we're looking at how much you're getting per year. APR is another way to look at that. And APY is most commonly applied in everything, right? If I say something's getting a 3% return, we assume we're speaking in APY. So yields, however, are a little bit tricky. And so because of that, we also need to figure out a little bit of what geometric means, geometric averages are. And so we'll talk a little bit about geomean as well. So a holding period return is a pretty simple calculation. Total return on an investment stated as a percentage. You take your return, what money you've made on it, and you divide it by how much you started with your investiture, right? If you invest $5,500 in savings bond, it pays $200 a year for 10 years, and then you were paid back your original $5,500. What is the holding period return? All right, well, you didn't make any money on the actual bond itself. You did make money on the $2,000 in interest, right? 10 years, $200. So 2,200 divided by 55, or excuse me, 2,000 divided by 5,500 is the holding period return. Return methods, annual percentage yield and annual percentage rates. A simplified way of understanding this, even though it's not going to get us to the 100% accurate way, is to take your total return, again, how much money you've made in an investment, divide it by your starting point divided by the years invested. And this, of course, is the I part of the time value of money. So here you see the example, $3,000 in Apple stocks. It pays you $400 a year in dividends for 1 year, and then you sell the stock for $3,500. How much did we make? Well, we made $500 because we bought it 3,000, sold it at 3,500, and then we also got 400 in dividends. We made $900. 900 divided by 3,000, it gets us how much interest, what our return was on that investment. Since it was just for a year, divided by 1, you get your answer, right? But now the second example, you can see it there. 5 years would mean obviously 5 would be how much you need to divide it by. Now, we have issues with APY whenever we use simple calculations like that. For instance, if you have several annual percentage yields, you cannot just add them up to get a holding period return. For instance, let's say you bought a stock for $20 and it rises to 25 through year 1 and then back down to 20 in year 2. You returned 25% one year, negative 20 the next year. So if you just add those together, you would think that your holding period return is 5%, but we're smarter than that. We know we bought it for 20 and we sold it for 20. So our holding period return should be 0%. All right. And so there's this calculation, if you want to get into the algebraic system where you take basically the square root there, or we can use geomean, which is a function in Excel. And so, whoops, let me pull that up for y'all. Geomean will tell us, that's an equal sign since this is a formula. Geomean will automatically do that. So we put in our different calculations, geometric means of an array of range of positive number data. So you put in your returns, your 20%, your 25%, or negative 20%, positive 25% into that, and it should give you what your geomean is. In that instance, it should be 0%. So a little bit of information on returns and how they're calculated. Definitely some good things there that we need to know and understand. I know it's fairly basic, still basic stuff that we're going over. However, if it depends on where you guys started from, and for some of us, maybe that's just good review. And so, next unit we'll begin talking a little bit about financial theory, and so we're going to get heavier into the ideas and kind of the academic thinking when it comes to investments. And then after that, weeks 4, 5, and 6 are going to be a little more like what you'd expect in a traditional. When you think traditionally about investments, right? They're going to be about stocks, they're going to be about bonds, they're going to be about different types of mutual funds and investment opportunities, and the pros and cons that go along with those, how you calculate their value, how you figure up returns, what's expected returns, what's the risk profile and the return for all of those. Hope everything's going good, but I'll, always available. If you guys have questions, reach out, shoot me a text. Thank you. Bye.